was 7 years old the first time someone told me I was too much. Too loud. Too sensitive. Too difficult. I remember standing in the corner of a classroom, tears running down my face, while a teacher looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, instead of a child to be understood. That moment didn't just pass, it stayed. It planted a seed inside me that would grow for the next 20 years, whispering the same sentence over and over again: something is wrong with you. And here is the strange part. Nobody ever sat me down and asked why I was crying. Nobody asked what happened at home the night before, or why my hands were shaking, or why I flinched every time a door slammed. They just saw the behavior. They never saw the reason. And that is the story of almost every single person who has ever been called broken, difficult, cold, angry, distant, or damaged. Nobody is born this way. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to build walls around their heart for no reason. Nobody chooses to stop trusting people just for fun. Every single wall, every single wound, every single defense mechanism has an origin story. And today, I am going to tell you mine. Not because I want sympathy, not because I want you to feel sorry for me, but because somewhere out there, right now, watching this video, there is a person who has spent years hating themselves for who they became, without ever once asking the most important question: who made me this way? If you have ever looked in the mirror and felt disgusted by your own reactions, if you have ever pushed someone away and later cried alone because you didn't know how to let them stay, if you have ever been called too much or not enough in the same lifetime, this video is for you. Because by the end of the next 8 minutes, you are going to understand something that took me almost 2 decades to learn. You did not create the person staring back at you in the mirror. The world did. And once you understand how it happened, you can finally begin to decide who you become next. So stay with me till the end, because the final 3 minutes of this video contain the one realization that changed everything for me. And it might just change everything for you too. Let me take you back further. I grew up in a house where love was never given freely. It was earned. If I got good grades, I was worthy of a hug. If I stayed quiet during arguments, I was worthy of peace. If I disappeared into the background and never asked for anything, I was worthy of being left alone, which, in that house, felt like the safest form of love available. So I learned early. I learned to shrink myself. I learned to read a room before I even opened my mouth. I learned that my needs were inconvenient, that my emotions were a burden, and that the safest way to survive was to become invisible. Nobody sat me down and taught me this in words. The world taught me in silence, in slammed doors, in raised voices. In nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong this time. Children are not born distrustful. They are made distrustful. One broken promise at a time. Children are not born emotionally distant. They are made distant one time their tears were mocked instead of comforted. And slowly, without realizing it, I built an entire personality out of survival. I became the funny one. Because if I made people laugh, they wouldn't look too closely at the pain underneath. I became the helper. Because if I was useful, maybe I would finally be wanted. I became an expert at reading people's moods before they even said a word. Because in my house, missing the warning signs meant getting hurt. These weren't character flaws. These were survival skills. And here is what nobody tells you. The very things that keep you safe as a child often become the very things that isolate you as an adult. By the time I was a teenager, the world added new lessons to the ones I already carried. I trusted a friend with a secret, and by Monday morning, the entire school knew. I trusted a boy with my heart, and he used it as entertainment for his friends. I trusted a teacher who was supposed to protect me, and instead, I learned that authority does not always mean safety. Every single time I opened myself up, even a little, life handed me a reason to slam the door shut again, and so the walls got higher, the distance got wider, the distrust got deeper. People around me started calling me cold, distant, guarded, hard to read, and you know what is heartbreaking? They were describing a wound and calling it a personality. Nobody looked at the fortress and asked what it was protecting. They just complained about not being let inside. This is when I want you to pause for a second and think about someone in your own life who you have judged as cold, difficult, or emotionally unavailable. What if that is not who they are? What if that is simply the scar tissue from wounds you never got to see? I am not saying this to excuse harmful behavior. I am saying this because understanding the root of pain is the first step to healing it, in ourselves and in the people we love. As I got older, the pattern followed me into every relationship, every friendship, every job. I would meet someone kind, and instead of feeling safe, I would feel suspicious, waiting for the moment they would reveal their true colors, because in my experience, kindness always had a price eventually. I would sabotage good things before they had the chance to become great things, because ending something on my own terms hurt less than being abandoned on someone else's. I pushed away people who tried to love me gently, because gentle love felt foreign, almost uncomfortable, like a language I had never been taught to speak. And for years, I believed this made me broken. I believed I was simply incapable of healthy love, incapable of trust, incapable of being the kind of person who could build something lasting. I looked at other people who seemed to trust easily, who seemed to love without fear, and I thought, what is wrong with me that I cannot do the same? But here is the truth I eventually discovered, and I want you to really absorb this. I was not incapable of trust. I was highly skilled at protecting myself from a world that had repeatedly proven itself unsafe. Those are two very different things. That one says you are broken. The other says you are a survivor who is still operating on old information. There came a specific night, and I remember it vividly, when everything started to shift. I was sitting alone after pushing away someone who had genuinely tried to love me well. And for the first time, instead of asking what is wrong with me, I asked a different question. I asked, when did I learn that people leave? When did I learn that love has to be earned? When did I learn that my emotions are too much for the people around me? And as I traced each behavior backward, like following a thread through a maze, I found a moment, a specific moment for every single wound. The classroom, the betrayed secret, the mocked tears, the silence that followed my needs. I realized that I was not a broken person. I was a collection of very intelligent adaptations to an unsafe environment. My guardedness was not a flaw. It was armor I built at age 7, because nobody else was going to protect that little kid. My difficulty trusting was not a character defect. It was a lesson taught to me by every person who broke my trust, before I even understood what trust meant. In that moment, sitting alone in the quiet, I whispered the words that would eventually become the title of this very video. What I am because the world made me this way. And saying it did not feel like an excuse. It felt like the first ounce of compassion I had ever given myself. Here is where the story does not end. But here is where the story does not end. Because understanding the wound is only half of the journey. So I understood why I became this way. I was faced with a choice that terrified me more than any trauma from my past. It made me this way, yes. But the world was not going to unmake me. I could do that. The part I need you to really hear, because I know some of you are nodding along right now, recognizing pieces of your own story in mine, And I don't want you to walk away from this video simply feeling validated in your pain. Validation is important, but it is not the destination. Understanding that the world shaped you is liberating, because it removes the shame. It tells you that you are not defective, you are wounded, and wounds can heal. But healing requires something the world will not do for you. It requires you to consciously, deliberately, sometimes painfully, choose new responses to old triggers. It means noticing when you want to push someone away out of fear, and choosing to stay for one more conversation instead. It means catching yourself when you assume the worst about someone's intentions, and asking yourself if that assumption comes from evidence, or from an old wound wearing a new face. It means learning, slowly and imperfectly, that not everyone who gets close to you is going to hurt you the way people did before. I will not pretend this transformation happened overnight, because that would be a lie. And I promised myself I would only tell you the truth in this video. It took years. It took countless moments of catching old patterns in real time and consciously choosing something different, even when the old pattern felt so much safer. It took allowing people to see the parts of me I had spent decades hiding, and surviving the vulnerability of that exposure. And it took grieving the childhood I did not get to have, the safety I did not get to feel, the love that should have come without conditions. And slowly, piece by piece, the walls that once protected a frightened child began to soften into boundaries chosen by a healing adult. There is a profound difference between a wall and a boundary. A wall keeps everyone out indiscriminately, built from fear. A boundary lets the right people in while still protecting your peace, built from self-respect. I did not tear down my walls completely, because some of them still serve a purpose. But I learned to turn them into something I control, rather than something that controls me. So if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. The world may have made you who you are today, through every harsh word, every broken promise, every moment you needed comfort and received criticism instead. That part of the story, you did not choose, and you carry no shame for it. But the person you become from this moment forward, that part belongs entirely to you. You get to decide whether the wounds the world gave you become the walls that isolate you for the first of your life, or the wisdom that helps you build something more intentional, more honest, more free. I am what I am because the world made me this way. But I am also becoming who I choose to be, one deliberate decision at a time, and so are you. If this story touched something in you, if you saw a piece of your own life reflected in mine, I want you to do something for me right now. Type in the comments the age you were when the world first taught you to protect yourself, and tell me what it taught you. I read every single comment, and I promise you, you are not alone in this. If this video meant something to you, hit subscribe, because we are going to keep having these honest conversations. The ones that actually matter. The ones nobody else is brave enough to have. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are not broken, they are healing. So thank you for staying with me until the very end. I will see you in the next one.